Neil Gaiman has been using his status as a celebrity to get banged by all kinds of women. And these average low status guys are pissed at that. They're jealous. So what do these lame asses do? They join the Me Too bandwagon, which is anti-male, to go after Gaiman. And they'll even admit the guy hasn't been put in jail for anything. So what's your name? Salty Nerd podcast, aptly named. Salty Nerds. Uh, you are the bad guys. Just letting you know that.
A little bit about how Ezra Miller was a little bit of a degenerate when it comes to the ladies. But
Translation: Ezra Miller got laid and had wild sex that this guy couldn't.
guess what? There's someone new that we can point fingers at, and his name is Neil Gaiman.
Someone new we could point fingers at. Thank you for admitting what your podcast is about, you jealous losers.
And it
Oh,
has
Lord.
coming out recently about charges of abuse. Up to 9 women have come forward to talk about some very disturbing behavior by the guy who, by all accounts, is the premier male feminist out there.
9 women come. So it's another Me Too. Like, these guys know better by now. These guys have seen man after man, like Cosby and up, come out and be attacked en masse by women all at once, right? Now, Neil Gaiman was into BDSM, which is consensual. Guess who else is into BDSM? A good chunk of the female population. Why women like BDSM? An erotic writer explains why so many, right? The biggest commonality I see when I put out a call for erotica by women without specifying a specific theme, there are stories about submissive women exploring BDSM. It's very, very common. So even the sex that they are describing as weird or degenerate is very commonplace. It's one of the largest fetishes out there. And it's practiced by women even more so than men, right?
And chose to take that photograph.
Yes, and
Somebody passed the butter.
He chose to take that. That's him. That's just a normal photograph, right? So they're calling this guy creepy. Well, he doesn't look any worse than the guys I see here.
So, guys,
I'm shocked that the liberal feminist is a sexual predator. I'm shocked.
Oh, I see. So a guy who gets action, he's a predator, right? This is how anti-male the average guy is. Woman gets sex with a guy, she's a victim. Guy gets sex with a woman, he's a predator, right?
well, guys,
I'm going to educate you nerds. Gaiman was just a guy who got laid, which is something you guys wish you could do.
Allegedly.
so
Can you
Vulture,
take the creepiest photo possible?
Yeah, for real, dude. Yeah, look at that. He
Again,
looks like
he
fucking
okayed
Golem
that.
with hair.
So why wouldn't he okay that? That's just him looking at the camera.
he's an
He's an
But guys-
artiste.
guys, this Vulture article, which is linked in the description, this is
Aptly named as well.
actually like probably one of the best articles I've read in a long time. And it goes in depth into all the accusations, these women who are coming forward. They're actually breaking NDAs, coming forward, talking about their experiences with Neil Gaiman. It goes in depth into his kind of relationship with his wife or ex-wife, Amanda Palmer, and her role, because she's an outspoken feminist, but she seems to have been covering up a lot of like his bad behavior.
Shocker.
He hasn't been covering up anything. She was involved in the bad. These guys are going to admit it, guys, later on in this video. They're going to admit that she was into it as well. She isn't covering up anything.
And this kind of goes part and parcel with like the whole like quote unquote male feminist thing, where you had like Joss Whedon, right? Where he was like, "Oh, I'm a male feminist. I'm all about supporting women and stuff like that." Turns out
That's true though. To be a feminist, feminism is a hate movement. So to be a feminist, you just need to hate on other men. You guys would make great male feminists. There's nothing to say that male feminists aren't allowed to get laid.
He was a lech, and basically he got canceled because of all this stuff. And when you hear the term male feminist, it's basically just an excuse. It's a shield, much like Brian is a shield for our show where we can talk about anything we want.
That's right.
Because, he's queer, he's here, he's non-binary.
So you need a shield to talk about whatever you want. Well, you're admitting you're part of a lower caste. Kaddish. Not me. I don't need a shield. I'm going to say whatever I like.
Binary.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But when someone says they're a male feminist, that's basically just a shield that they use to mask their terrible behavior. Now, I'm not going to go into detail.
This guy didn't engage in terrible behavior. He engaged in consensual BDSM with women. If he's engaging in terrible behavior, how come the women aren't engaging in terrible behavior? Right? The women that's involving themselves in BDSM. See the double standards, everyone?
Detail into all the nitty gritty behind like what he did, because some of it's like truly like disturbing and disgusting. But the overview here is basically Neil Gaiman grew up in an abusive Scientology household.
By the way, guys, if a woman grows up in an abusive household, they use that to make excuses for her. Notice it doesn't work for the men.
He then became famous for his Sandman comic books, which led into novels, which have been adapted by Hollywood. And so he became very rich.
So he became rich and famous, and the girls latched onto him. Say no more.
And he, by all accounts, got into a BDSM lifestyle, which is basically bondage, discipline, sadomasochism. And the thing about BDSM lifestyles, apparently, according to this article, is that they're all based around consent between the two parties involved. But
Exactly. So you guys know better. This is a Me Too scam, right? These girls engaged in consensual sex. Now they're turning on him.
With Neil Gaiman, he had this whole master-slave complex. And so like he didn't care about consent. And so a lot of the
Bullshit. He didn't care about consent. You're lying now. The BDS community is all about consent. That's why they have safe words.
these times with these women that are accusing him, he basically just sexually assaulted them, essentially, according to them, allegedly.
Yeah. And guess what? If he did, he'd be behind bars. The police didn't find anything, did they? So you are spreading a lie. You are slandering Gaiman. So you are a part of this feminist hate movement. You are a male feminist, dude.
And his attorneys who are defending him on this are basically saying, like, yeah, this happened, but it was between two consenting adults in a BDSM relationship, and that's not illegal, right? And
Well, absolutely true. It's a perfect defense. Otherwise, you would have to put women behind bars too. You guys aren't for that.
So basically, there's a part in this this article where the main girl who's making this allegation has a talk with Amanda Palmer, who's his ex-wife, and she's like,
hey, the main girl. Why would they be a main girl? Either women were assaulted or they weren't. They'd all be equal, wouldn't they?
A musician, and she's very big on Patreon and stuff like that. And she says that she talks about the experiences that she had with Neil, and Amanda Palmer says, like, oh, you're one of 18 women who've come to me about this, and like, I'll handle it for you. And so, like, basically
there you go. If these girls were sexually assaulted, they wouldn't come to Amanda Palmer, his wife. They'd go to the police. So it obviously wasn't sexual assault.
Like this feminist like musical icon is part and parcel responsible for his bad behavior. It's kind of like Leslie Headland with Harvey Weinstein and stuff like that. And
Harvey Weinstein didn't do anything wrong either. He just engaged in the casting couch, which is a form of prostitution. And the actresses involved with him gained a lot more than he ever did. They gained $1 million careers. He just got laid once or twice. So he isn't guilty of anything either.
But the crazy thing about the story is there's no fallout from it, and it's because Neil Gaiman has.
What are you talking about? It isn't over yet. They're after him.
Is like his, he's on the right side of the political aisle when it comes to this type of stuff. Like when Russell.
If that was a protection, he wouldn't be Me Too'd, would he? Like every other guy.
Russell Brand got accused of something far less disgusting than what is being levied at Neil Gaiman.
Well, there you go, guys. You know better. So what's the odds? Russell Brand, he was obviously innocent, but Neil Gaiman can't be Me Too'd? He can't also be innocent? You guys are a part of the problem. You guys are basically male feminists.
Like, people actively tried to destroy his career. When it comes to Neil Gaiman, it's just like, oh, Amazon replaced him as the showrunner for the finale of Good Omens. And that's
Ooh, he's all over YouTube. How many of these videos have I seen on YouTube with people slandering him like you are? His downfall is still in the works. You even have it in your title, The Downfall of Neil Gaiman. How can you put a title like that if you don't believe he hasn't gotten any pushback?
That's pretty much all there is to it. Like the story isn't being circulated wide and far like it was with Harvey Weinstein.
Nonsense. Like I said, it's all over YouTube. It's everywhere.
So you have a situation here where basically Neil Gaiman, who's a male feminist, is pretty much going to get away with mistreating all these women. And
he didn't mistreat anyone. You slanderer. Engaged in consensual BDSM. That's all he did. He didn't harm any women. Again, if he did, the police would have put him behind bars. I mean, come on. Neil Gaiman comes from UK. The UK police would be chomping at the bit to throw him behind bars.
It's pretty disgusting. We've seen this in the past with people like Roman Polanski and stuff like
that. Hey, don't even bother. Roman Polanski was actually engaging with an underage girl, someone who was actually a child, practically prepubescent. Neil Gaiman has been engaging in consensual sex with adult women. There is no comparison.
Like that, where basically Hollywood is okay with bad behavior as long as, you're in the right cocktail circuit. And
why are you bringing up Hollywood? It's the legal system that matters. If the legal system hasn't found him guilty of anything, he's not guilty of anything. So you're saying Hollywood should punish Neil Gaiman when he isn't guilty of a crime? Well, he is guilty of a crime, isn't he? He's getting the sex you guys can only dream of. That's what he's guilty of.
So I just want to have like a kind of honest discussion about this. I'm going to start with Reaper.
Well, there's nothing honest so far about the slander you are spreading. If you were honest, you would be on Gaiman's side.
Even though Neil Gaiman isn't, from like he's not British, but he grew up in the UK, and so like a lot of people think he's British, and they're looking at him as like, oh, this is just another example of like
that's just those Brits.
Yeah,
BDSM, unconsensual rape. That's just the UK. Exactly.
If it's consensual, it's not rape, dude. Reaper. And also, again, look at these guys. They're othering other men. See, there's the bad guys over there in the UK. And I gotta admit, Reaper, they are the bad guys in the way that UK is a feminist shithole. They have no staring laws in the transit for men. Men can't look at women. They could be thrown behind bars. So these UK police, if they thought they had a case at all against Gaiman, would be chomping at the bit to get at him. Evidence right there that he's not guilty of anything.
Yeah, where was that line of thought going?
Oh, quirky Neil. He gets
Oh my
that from
God.
us.
Yeah. So, Reaper,
No,
what's,
but like-
what's your take on this?
Well, what did the women think when you were talking to his wife? Going, yeah, your husband just sexually assaulted me. Can you do something about him?
Well, obviously, he didn't sexually assault them. They had problems with him in some other way. That's all that went on there. If he did, they'd go to the police. Reaper.
Put him in the corner. Take his money from him. Go with the police. Did they actually go to the police? I'm not 100% sure. But I don't get the whole talk. I think the talking to his wife was probably a hush money.
So they did go to the police, but the police said that unless his wife could corroborate what they said, there was no case there. And so a lot of these...
Okay.
There you go, guys. Then my assumption is he's not guilty of anything. The women have no evidence. Right.
a lot of these police complaints got dismissed as case closed.
Exactly. So why do you think Hollywood should be punishing Neil Gaiman then? Don't you believe in innocent until proven guilty? Of course you don't.
See, I thought if they
Not when it comes to other men.
just went to his wife, I'd go, why would you do that? That would be just a weird thing to do, but that makes sense.
Well, oftentimes his wife was responsible for...
Well, and didn't like 2 or 3 of the girls did go to the police, but then there was payoffs and NDAs and all that other stuff. That's kind of the thing.
Oh, okay.
And here's the other thing, too, and here's the problem with this whole situation. Do I
There were payoffs. Okay. Then they were lying for money.
think that, personally, do I think Gaiman's guilty of some of this stuff? Yes. But I also feel like some of these women facilitated this.
Well, I personally believe he wasn't. And the evidence supports my opinion, not yours.
Because if you even read, and I'm not trying to victim blame, but if you read through the whole thing,
Dude, for you to say that would suggest that you consider these women victims. They aren't victims. They just engaged in wild sex that you will never see.
the one victim doesn't even say no until some of the most horrific acts are already over. And then she still is in a relationship with the guy. And I get it.
Thank you, Connors. So she didn't say no at all then. If she said no after they were over, she didn't say no. Right. And she was still with him. Yes, she was still hovering around this high status man. She engaged in consensual BDSM and she wanted to hang with them. And you guys know through experience from all these other Me Too cases what they're about. So you should have no reason to attack Neil Gaiman. None.
It's a complicated mess. And it's really strange because this is the same thing with like the Harvey Weinstein.
No. This is not complicated and it's not strange. It's very simple. Neil Gaiman is the next victim of a Me Too attack. That's all it is. It doesn't get any simpler than that. It's only complex if you want to believe in the lies.
Weinstein case, because I read through the whole case and I'm like, do I think he's guilty of a lot of stuff that people are saying? Oh, fuck yes. But reading through this case, I don't know how the hell he got convicted of anything because a lot of it was hearsay.
So you believe he's guilty, but you don't see how... I'm sorry, I've got to back this up. He's contradicted himself.
Same thing with like the Harvey Weinstein case, because I read through the whole case and I'm like, do I think he's guilty of a lot of stuff that people are saying? Oh, fuck yes. But reading through this case, I don't know how the hell he got convicted of anything, because
You don't know how he got convicted of anything, but he's guilty, according to me. You believe he's guilty. If you believed he's guilty, then the evidence would be there to support your belief. Connors, you male feminist.
a lot of it was hearsay. And when you're in a relationship with somebody, it's very tough to prove assault without any sort of physical evidence whatsoever, whether it's you go to the doctor right after the assault happens, whether there's a text message exchange between the two of you. And that's the problem, is it doesn't sound like anything really supports this girl's story outside of a few things. And some of the other stories I don't know all the specifics of. But then his dumb ass comes out and puts out the fucking statement where he confirms some of it and then he denies some of it, but doesn't specify which.
If he confirms some of it, it means he's being truthful, isn't it? He's being truthful because he's part of the BDSM community. And so I believe whatever he denies is also the truth. You have no reason other than your jealousy to claim otherwise.
Right. And then he apologizes for bad behavior. And it's like, well, once you do that, you've basically owned this shit, Gaimen. Right.
No, he doesn't own it. He put chum in the water. Guys do this all the time. How many male gamers have been assaulted with this Me Too garbage, these false allegations? And then they apologize, hoping it'll go away. But they're still innocent.
At that point, and you've got all these NDAs and other things out there that really kind of make the whole thing look messy as hell. And again, so I think you've got him taking advantage of vulnerable women. You've got
No, you slanderer. These women aren't vulnerable. They're just leeching on a high status man. He turns them on because he's high status and they're willing to engage in sex with him. They are not vulnerable. So you see, these man haters are all the same. A woman engages in sex with a man, she's a victim. Man engages in sex with a woman, he's a predator, right? You guys would make great male feminists.
women taking advantage of the fact that they get to hang out with this guy. The one girl was more enamored.
So they're vulnerable, but they're taking advantage of hanging around with this famous guy. Like, can these guys, these liars, not contradict themselves constantly?
With Amanda Palmer than anybody. So that's the other weird wrinkle in this mess, because it even gets people like Xena Warrior Princess involved. I don't know if you guys heard about this, because Amanda was with what's her face, the chick who plays her,
Lucy Lawless.
Lucy Lawless, when she met one of these girls. And so like this is just a weird thing that has been going on for years.
How's it weird? So is Lucy Lawless bisexual or lesbian? How's that weird? That's pretty common from what I know.
And honestly, the whole thing just stinks to high heaven, because there's been payouts already, there's been NDAs, and it's like all of a sudden now you guys are all deciding to cancel this guy. And I have no love for Neil Gaiman. I could give a shit. I've never.
That's why you're going after him. If it was a guy you really liked, you'd say the opposite. I don't like Neil Gaiman at all. He's a male feminist. He would throw me under the bus in a heartbeat. It looks good on him. Looks good on Neil Gaiman, the male feminist gets zapped. However, what's more important to me is the death of this evil Me Too. It's a lynching of innocent men. Gaiman is guilty of being a male feminist, but he's innocent of assaulting women. It's that simple.
Never read any of his books. I don't care. Right? I think he's one of the OG emos. Right? Like, to me, that's what he is. So if women find that shit attractive, that's their own fault. If they get involved.
Well, there you go. Right. And of course, the jealousy is oozing. Why aren't women into like ordinary guys like me who are nobodies? Because they aren't Connors. And you have to come to terms with that. but you can't. So that's why you're jumping on the Me Too bandwagon.
In this shit, look, say no and leave. Like the motherfucker has a bathtub in his backyard. Not a jacuzzi, a fucking bathtub.
Why is this such a big no-no? What difference does it make? If it fulfills the same idea, you fill it up with water and you get in it.
And there's pictures of it.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm sitting here looking at it going, where's the plumbing for this fucking thing?
Well, do you need any? I mean, if you have a pool, you fill it up with a hose. Dude, you can have a fountain in the backyard. Why can't you have a bathtub?
Apologize for the language, but I mean, it's like, all right, if that wasn't enough for you to say, all right, peace, I'm out, Mr. Gaimen.
What? So your idea of a line of kink is getting in the bathtub as opposed to a jacuzzi.
Then, honestly, after whatever happens after that point, you kind of signed up for it. That's what I feel like. And I'm not, again, not trying to victim shame, but at the same time, Gaimen's a depraved.
You're not victim shaming, dude. You admitted that these women were clinging on to Gaimen because of his status. They're not victims. So again, you're slandering Neil Gaimen. You're a liar, sir.
Perverted freak. We know this from his work. Right? It's some of the most artistic people in the world. Guess what? They're the freakiest. That's just the way it is. Motherfucker's got an obsession with butter. We don't even want to get into specifics.
What's wrong with butter? There are all kinds of steamy sex scenes on movies where someone would be eating fruit off a woman's chest or pouring honey on her, right? So why is butter off the table? These guys, they're real Puritans.
With this shit here. This shit is so nasty.
Man, it's like those people who get in a relationship with freaking like Marilyn Manson.
Right.
And they're like, oh, he was so
Marilyn Manson is a perfect example of a guy who was railroaded by Me Too, and he was proven innocent. Right? So you should be on his side. So here you are bashing a man you know is innocent. He's just been proven so. So this goes to show that this isn't about what these men did was bad. It's about they are high status. They get laid. You salty nerds are jealous.
such a weird.
He was such a weirdo. It's like,
he's such a weirdo.
it's Marilyn fucking Manson.
No.
And you know something? From what I understand, is Marilyn Manson is actually a very normal guy. All that weirdness was just for show. But even if it wasn't, even if he was exactly what you see, what does that got to do with anything?
Oh, really?
Really? Did you think he was going to be like Pee Wee Herman? Bad example, but still.
Well, what's interesting here is that no criminal charges have been brought against Neil Gaiman, but
Right.
There you go. Then he's not guilty of anything. Innocent until proven guilty. That's what you should think.
this was an in-depth investigation where they found a bunch of women who didn't know each other and independently have all these kind of patterns of behavior for him and things that he makes them say and things that he makes them do. And he uses his money as leverage to basically kind of force these women into these situations where he has sex.
Bullshit. He doesn't force women to do shit. If someone offered you money and you went for it, people just call you out and say, you weren't forced to do shit.
With them allegedly, and
the worst case is that he engaged in prostitution, which is again consensual.
I just want to read you guys what his representatives said about this. He said that Neil Gaiman's official position is that sexual degradation, bondage, domination, sadism, and masochism may not
What
be
are
to
we doing
everyone's
here?
taste, but between consenting adults, BDSM is lawful. So,
Which is true. It is lawful. Right? You guys don't want your sex lives policed, if you have any. So he deserves the same rights as you.
so I want to ask you, Odin, just, you know,
Of course.
Yeah, Odin the Christian. What do you
Now
think
that
about
I've given you that description of his sexual preferences, let me ask you your thoughts on the matter.
well, no, not about his preferences, but
What
the
do you
fact
feel
that-
about butter, Odin?
Are you pro butter, Odin? But here's the thing I want to ask you. So like you have this obviously like dangerous kind of like bad behavior, and Hollywood.
How's it dangerous? If it's consensual, they have safe words, right? At worst, it's risky, right? But I mean, what can I say? People engage in it. Look, dudes, you guys would love to engage in some wild sex. You just can't. You're lucky if you get any sex at all, right?
Hollywood's just kind of cool with it, and it's because Neil Gaiman, he goes to the right cocktail parties, he has the right politics. What does it take for Hollywood to actually like punish people for their behavior, do you think?
Why would Hollywood punish a guy who's innocent? If he was guilty, the police would grab him. So the police are saying he's not guilty of anything, and you want Hollywood to. So you were a bunch of Me Too guys. You're a part of the Me Too bandwagon. You were bad people. You're going after innocent men and slandering them and hoping they'll get punished out of no other reason that you were male hostile and you're jealous of this guy.
I mean, it takes, honestly, the worst crimes imaginable that are publicly known and proven. Basically, like, had there been actual evidence of anything that this guy had done with, like, kids, like, especially nowadays where I feel like the general public is a lot more sensitive to that kind of stuff, I think that might have been enough to, at the very least, put him on, like, that list. But even...
He didn't do anything with children, you can tell, because he'd be behind bars. You guys are willing to lynch him when he hasn't done anything. He hasn't been proven to do anything wrong.
Then, right, with Hollywood, it doesn't take them very long often, even in those cases, to, to make the path of redemption very easy for them.
I don't know if you...
Redemption? He hasn't done anything wrong, you slanderer. Now, BDSM does not belong in Hollywood. It's all over the world. Women engage in it in huge numbers. Right? BDSM culture can make a woman more assertive in work. See, when women engage in something, it's shown as positive. Right?
You read this in the article or not, but there were situations where he had his kid in the room when he was doing things to these women.
Yeah, well, that's a lie. Because if that was proven, if that was the case, they would remove his child from him. Child services would become involved. I just assume that's a lie.
Why?
And that's, again, I hate that I even have to put it this way, but like that just shows you like just how depraved Hollywood is, because that is not really what is at all getting out. Like, mostly what I'm saying is that if it had been that the victim was that, I personally think that makes the...
So this is more the elites, the nasty elites, right?
That child a victim, because that child has now been scarred for life. And it's just, again, to me, even more so than anything else, I don't think there's ever going to be anything that's going to have them hold each other accountable unless we hold them accountable. Like, that's really what it comes down to. They're not going to do anything unless we, the audience, the people, actually do.
So you want to be a part of this lynch mob. You are a part of this lynch mob. This YouTube lynch mob. I see all kinds of people making all these claims that you are admitting haven't been proven.
something, actually say something, actually try to bring, real change about, because they're so depraved. And I mean, this is something that unfortunately has just really pervaded Hollywood since almost its entire inception, where there's always been a lot of these problems and issues, right? If you look at, for instance, broken marriages, like the highest percentage of broken marriages you'll ever find is in Hollywood. If you look at almost anything.
Marriage is shit anyway, guys. You guys have no rights in your marriages, so who gives a shit? Marriage is a scam.
And open
Right.
marriages too.
Open marriages, right?
Oh yeah, open marriages. People actually having sex with other people. That's such a no-no.
And then as you get along, as things get further advanced and further along, right, especially after the sexual revolution, now anything, especially when it comes to sexual depravity, you're always going to find the highest concentration of it in Hollywood. So there's just something about
with guys with high status. Girls are willing to bang them. Like I said, you guys would engage in all this depravity, but you can't.
the business and about the industry that either brings those people in or warps those people into those kinds of persons. It's really hard to say which one is which. Maybe it's a little bit of both. But it honestly is just kind of crazy because it kind of just reminds me a little bit of, and obviously not the same at all, Neil Gaiman and a lot of the other people that we could probably think of, but the one that comes up in my mind is the situation of James Gunn, right, where he said a lot of really weird jokes that involved mentioning like kids, and
PDF
at one
files.
point at one point he actually dressed as a priest and went to a party like as a pedophile priest, and it was just like okay, there's like
that humor is off the table. So at worst, it's distasteful. Okay.
like there's a lot of things that I think are honestly just so depraved about Hollywood. It makes them deserve all of the prayers in the world for their conversion, because there needs to be I think Father Chad Ripperger, who's a well-known exorcist, needs to go throughout all of Hollywood, all the studios, and just exorcise the
You Puritans are bottom of the barrel.
demons, because it's bad.
Well, speaking of open marriages and stuff like that,
What happened is Neil Gaiman had all kinds of tail. He had options. He had a better sex life than you. So string him up.
Brian, not that you're in an open marriage.
Wow.
But
You gotta work on your segues, bro.
Neil Gaiman's wife, Amanda Palmer, when they first got together, they were in an open relationship. They actively encouraged each other to have affairs when they were like away from each other. And
Okay, well, there's nothing wrong with that. It's consenting adults. Right? She wanted to bang other people. And so did he. So what are you going to do?
And Amanda Palmer she's bisexual. She would pick up other women, and then she would kind of like, once she was done with them, she would feed them to her husband. Essentially, she'd like, kind of like provide him
like piranhas.
Yeah, pretty much. She'd provide him like.
Oh, I see. She was banging. So she got together with other women who were willing to bang her and bang her husband because he was famous. Right. So everyone was consenting adults. What can I say?
New sexual
Like
partners.
Leslie Headland.
Exactly. And the crazy thing about this is that, both her and Neil Gaiman have all been kind of like praised as, examples of like, feminists, like people putting women first and stuff like that.
Well, they do. Neil Gaiman would throw one of you loser males under the bus in a heartbeat. That's all a male feminist is. And you would make great male feminists because you're doing the same to him.
But I'd highly encourage people to read this article because like it goes so in depth into like everything wrong with like Hollywood and celebrities and stuff like that nowadays. But the reason that
dude, BDSM is worldwide. Its popularity with women reaches the four corners. So again, why do you keep talking about Hollywood?
A lot of people are saying that this stuff is coming out now is because Amanda Palmer and Neil Gaiman are in the middle of a very contentious divorce. And basically,
There you go. They're between a contentious divorce, and all of a sudden, a Me Too lynch mob shows up. Wow. So again, you guys know better. There's no excuse for you. You are not ignorant. You are part of this lynch mob. You are bad people.
Amanda Palmer has been bankrupted by this divorce and fighting him. And so what she's trying to do is trying to bring these allegations to light as a pressure tactic in order to get him to kind of like, give her some of like the money and property and stuff like that.
So this is a money grab. Divorce does not mean that there has to be a wealth exchange. She got tired of her husband, decided it was time to dump him, the way that wives do, and she wanted to drain him of all his wealth. And she's losing. So that's why she is now fighting dirty. So it's so obvious what's going on here. And you guys are even mentioning it, and you're still after Gaiman. Pathetic.
He owns. So what's your take on this whole thing?
I don't have much of a take, bro. I didn't even know who that person was until today. So sounds like he is a douchebag.
So he's a douchebag because he got laid by multiple women? Nothing anti-male about that, is there?
But I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know? You've never heard of Me Too?
I do know that Hollywood is, in Odin's right, just rife with depravity over depravity. And you only see the surface stuff. We don't ever really see how bad it really is. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if like well-known names that we knew were just into the same exact stuff. They just haven't gotten out yet. So I don't have much.
BDSM is simply a more extreme version of the average roughhousing. You guys never had your woman, well, maybe you haven't, ask you to slap her bum or pull her hair. I mean, maybe you haven't. You're just, most is nobody. Sure, if you're with a woman, most likely you're in a sexless marriage, right? That's where all the fuel for this fire comes from.
Much of an opinion because I don't know the guy, but I am disgusted by his actions. Or
you don't know the guy, but you're disgusted by his actions. His actions that are not criminal according to the legal system.
Alleged actions.
Well, Alex, what's crazy about this is that as Neil Gaiman was kind of like gaining celebrity and renown through like comic books and novels and stuff like that, a lot of his quote unquote alleged victims were basically fans of his, and he'd go to like all these like fan events and like these.
That's right. Right, that's right. Women glob on to high status men of fame and fortune. That's right. He gained access to women the way that you guys could only dream of.
These award shows and stuff like that, and young girls who were like super into his stuff would like run up to him and like basically throw themselves at him.
Thank you for admitting that. Right. So they're not victims. They would bang him in a heartbeat. They're making themselves available. Thank you for admitting that. So what you just admitted to is that this is all about jealousy. He got all the girls. And you guys, if at best, will be begging some housewife leech to do you once in a blue moon.
And so like he'd start, kind of preying on people.
No, he wasn't praying it. They were throwing themselves at him. He wasn't praying. Matter of fact, they're preying on him. You're admitting that his wife is preying on him with the Me Too lynch mob to drain him of all his wealth that he earned. You male feminist. Make no mistake about this. You guys know better. So you were 100% guilty of what's going on here, of slandering this man out of jealousy and hostility. You are the bad guys. And that's all we have to say about this.